Shipping is a key part of our economy, our culture, and even defence, but it is a very, very big polluter. Here at Portsmouth, they're trying to put that into reverse. Shipping in all its forms accounts for about 2% of our emissions that contribute to global warming, a little less, in fact, than aviation. But it also contributes to air pollution. Now, here at Portsmouth, they're hoping to tackle both of those things. Also on the show, we hear about the green revolution sweeping China and why their emissions may start declining next year. We visit the warehouse tackling fashion waste, where tens of thousands of items of clothing will have their lives extended. And I chat to my old boss about whether the media is doing a good job covering climate change. Until recently, you were in charge of one of those news desks. Why didn't you do more then?
I did, I tried, I failed.
As you can see, the container vessel behind me is just loading and unloading. But when a ship's in port, it doesn't mean the engines are turned off, and it doesn't mean the pollution stops. The journey's over, but the pollution isn't. Nearly all ships in port still run backup engines or generators powered by diesel. For big vessels, especially cruise ships, this can be very polluting. And in city ports like Portsmouth, pollution harms health.
What we've got here is an array of air quality sensors.
Alex's company has built and fitted kit to sniff the breeze throughout the port round the clock to identify pollution sources.
We've got air quality monitors picking up pollutants such as particulates and gases. What we have here is a correlation with the vessel movement against the particulates and when they're being produced. What this means is we can annotate and articulate which vessel is polluting and by how much.
And in the end, what is this showing you about the correlation between ships and pollution?
The changes in the ship movements is what's vital. This is when the engines are really kicking in and we're beginning to see gases and particulates spike.
And why does this matter to you so much?
I'm local. I've been born and bred in the Solent. What's good for the Solent is good for me and my family.
Academic research suggests ill health resulting from air pollution costs the NHS £20 billion per year. And at Portsmouth University, researchers say the air in sea cities can be especially hazardous.
There are a number of issues with human health around air pollution. So first of all, we might be thinking about respiratory disease, things like asthma, but also cardiovascular disease. So air pollution has been linked to issues with the heart and the circulation system. The air quality in the vicinity of the port is quite poor.
Portsmouth International Port welcomes ferries, freighters, warships and cruise ships. More than 49,000 vessels a year, supporting 2,500 jobs in the port and nearby. So how can they clear the air? One way to clean up is plug in, with a project called Sea Change.
Each of these will be able to plug in a vessel, get it to turn off its auxiliary engines and run on electricity.
And when you talk about plugging in, I've sort of got this image of a cable and a socket. Is it a bit like that?
It's not far off, so you can have lots of different types of cable management systems. Some of them are on wheels, they're really, really big pieces of kit that you roll up and down your berth, and some of them will be stationary and they might sit alongside the berth.
Roughly how expensive is it to convert, to put these kind of things in? Do you have any idea?
It's an expensive extension lead, I'll put it that way. It's more than I would pay at home, that's for sure. So our project total to get the shore power at berths 2, 3 and 4, we were awarded £19.8 million in funding.
Right. Big spending for both reducing air pollution and cutting carbon by 20,000 tonnes a year in Portsmouth. And according to researchers at the university, what works here would help our other ports.
Ultimately, if we're to achieve our 2050 net zero goals, all ports are going to have to decarbonise. It's really difficult. So we're starting here and we aim to help others do the same or similar.
A smaller version of this shore power does already exist here. These are plugs for tugs. But what are the people here doing about the pollution when ships actually get out to sea on their voyage? Brittany Ferries is building 2 new hybrid gas-electric vessels due here by 2025.
The real benefits from these new ships, the hybrid ships, will come when we can plug them in, and we get about a 15% reduction in CO2 in France and the UK combined. The electric power can be used to power the ship systems while in port, but also, importantly, when it's leaving and entering Portsmouth, which means that not only is it much better on CO2 emissions, but it's much kinder to our neighbours.
You've still got the LNG in there, you've still got a fossil fuel in there. Why can't you get rid of that?
Well, you're absolutely right. We know that's not perfect. We know that's an interim fuel for the future. But the reality is, at the moment, for the journeys that we make, we're on quite a long bit of the English Channel. Unfortunately, there's no technology available at the moment that will allow us to change completely to a clean fuel.
An immediate stumbling block could be the high cost of electricity, which could deter some ships from plugging in. But port authorities here say they're working on a price that will be both attractive and realistic. A key first step to greening shipping. We're used to hearing bad news on emissions from China, which is the world's biggest polluter. But now, exciting changes are happening there. Just take a look at this graph showing the amount of new solar installed each year from January to August. Here's 2023, smashing previous records as the cost of solar power reaches record lows. But it's not just solar, wind power is also booming. And the EV market has taken off too, with battery-powered vehicles now consisting of over 30% of the new vehicles produced in China, well ahead of the 20% target set for 2025. It all means that new analysis now predicts that China's emissions will go into structural decline from next year. Well, the man behind that research is Laurie Mielweerter from the Centre for Energy and Clean Air, and he joins me now. Thanks for joining us, Laurie. What has your research revealed?
China's had an absolutely impressive year for clean energy this year. More than 200 gigawatts of solar power are going to be added, which is more than, for example, the total installed capacity in the United States.
This year alone, just to make sure I've understood, they've added more solar than the entire installed capacity of America.
That's right.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, carry on.
that is huge. That is huge, even for China. So it's more than doubling from last year's levels, and it's a result of a shift in the Chinese economy. The government clamped down on an overinflated real estate sector, and that has seen a lot of the investment that used to go into real estate now going into manufacturing clean energy and installing clean energy.
One of the criticisms you often see in the press here, and I often get asked, is, oh, no, it doesn't matter what we do because China's building all these coal-fired power stations or whatever. What do you now say to that?
So all of this means that with this amount of clean energy being put in place, the additional electricity generation exceeds the growth in electricity demand. And so that means that there's no more space for power generation from polluting energy sources, coal and gas to grow.
Is this just a one-off year, or what do we think will happen next year and the year after?
This increase has been driven by targets that China's local governments, provincial governments have set for the 5-year period that runs up to 2025. So there's quite firm policy support until 2025. Overall, there's a lot of enthusiasm from local governments, from project developers. So in that sense, the boom seems on a firm footing. There's also been even more massive investment in manufacturing of solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, and so on. And so that investment in manufacturing capacity definitely requires the boom to continue.
Are we on the cusp of China and its economy becoming a climate leader?
China's already been a leader in some respects. It's by far the largest developer of clean energy, whether you look at solar, wind, or nuclear. And of course, China's emissions have still been on the up, increasing significantly from past years. So in that sense, China's been the drag on global climate action. But now, if this trend continues in clean energy, we should see China's emissions starting to fall, and that would have a huge impact on on the global emission trajectory, and that would certainly put China in a position to say that they're at least contributing in a very significant positive way, or maybe even leading.
Thanks very much indeed, Larry. Fascinating and somewhat uplifting too. Now, Rishi Sunak shuffled his ministerial pack this week. Out went Therese Coffey from the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. In came Steve Barclay, being the 7th Secretary of State in that post in the last 7 years. Let's have a look at the list. We had Andrea Leadsom, she lasted a year, then Michael Gove, a relative long-term stayer at DEFRA with a 2-year stint. Teresa Villiers did just 7 months. George Eustice, another 2 years. Ranil Jayawardena, less than 2 months. And Therese Coffey lasted a year. So what is or should be in Steve Barclay's in-tray? Well, we did bid for an interview. Sadly, he wasn't available. So I'm joined by Kate Norgrove from WWF at their lovely headquarters here in Woking. So first of all, Kate, what do you think about the kind of merry-go-round of ministers in DEFRA?
Yeah, we've had quite a few over the last few years, haven't we? And it's not great for the stability and the ambition of government and what we need to do on climate and nature. So, you know, that worries me, but also what worries me is a lack of joined up cross-government thinking, not just with DEFRA, but also with the Treasury, Trade, Cabinet Office. We're at, you know, tackling climate and nature is going to involve action in all of those areas, and that's not what we're seeing at the moment.
Are there some policies that actually kind of need seeing through by the same individual and keep getting shunted back when the person at the top changes?
Yeah, I mean, like one example of that, it's been 2 years since the Environment Act was introduced. World-leading, world-beating Environment Act, we were told, and actually 2 years on, we are still waiting for secondary legislation to come into place to mean that deforestation gets taken out of our supply chains.
Can you just explain a little bit what that means, taking deforestation out of our supply chain? Is it about when we buy something in the shops, we can ensure a tree wasn't cut down to get it there or to make it?
Exactly. So for example, my kids sometimes go to chicken shops after school, you know, and lots of their friends do go down the high street and get a kebab or something on their way home from school. We've got no way of knowing at the moment if that chicken was fed with soy from deforested land in, say, Brazil. And that's outrageous. My children shouldn't effectively be eating deforestation. And what we need to do is sort that out through this secondary legislation that would stop that from happening.
And it's kind of what you're saying is it's almost there. We've almost got that legislation actually on the books, but not quite.
We're told it's been drafted. And so what's happened to it? Where is it? And in fact, I was with some businesses last week. Some of our major supermarkets are saying, we've got these commitments. We've got to take deforestation out of our supply chains by 2025. But in order to do that, we need the legislation to bring in a level playing field to make it easier and more effective for them to do so.
And this is in effect something that's been agreed. It actually just needs the delivery to get on and do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, I was going to ask you what he should be cracking on with. That's clearly one of them. What about domestically?
Yeah, I mean, the other one would be sorting out the way we use our land. So another piece is the land use strategy, which, again, it's another promise that's been made by successive ministers to have a strategy for reaching our nutritional targets, our nature targets, our climate targets. And yet, where is that to be seen? We're promised that at the end of this year, and that's not in place.
And do we know anything about Steve Barclay and his strengths and weaknesses when it comes to the environment?
His constituency is in a very intensively farmed area. We know that that farming and our hard-working farmers need to be supported to restore nature and produce food. My hope is that he'll tackle that straight away and get into grips with that in his agenda. Rivers is going to be a key issue for him. And on that, we know that the water companies need to pay for the damage that they're doing, but we also know that farmers and big agricultural producers also need to be held to account for the pollution that's going into our rivers.
Thanks very much indeed, Kate. Well, we're off to a break now, and when we come back, why this London warehouse will help extend the life of tens of thousands of clothing items a year. And I'll be asking my old boss about how journalists should cover climate change as it becomes more of a political football. Welcome back to the show. Now, the fashion industry has a bad reputation for waste and harming the environment, but a new partnership between a warehouse in East London and the outdoor clothing brand Patagonia hopes to extend the life of tens of thousands of garments while also providing work for underemployed people. The Climate Show's Mickey Carroll has been to take a look.
This clothes factory in North London employs 45 machinists. For the last 12 years they've been making clothes for well-known brands like ASOS and Community Clothing, but work is getting harder to find.
Even a couple of years ago, a typical production run on one garment would be 4,000, and now we'd be lucky if it was 300 units.
Fashion companies are moving their production overseas, which means less work for the people here. So Jenny is trying something new.
We've pivoted and looked at new technology within the industry. So in our Unit 4, it's completely different. You know, this is the old way of doing it, but the new way is exciting.
You going to show me it?
Yes, of course. So this is our very, very, very exciting repair centre. This is the future that you're seeing here. We should be getting every day of a life of a garment out of a garment. Like, we should not be throwing garments away.
The idea is simple. When your clothes get torn, hem comes loose or the zip breaks, you don't replace the whole thing, you send it back to the manufacturer. They give it to this team of machinists who get it looking as good as new.
Here we're unpicking the zip, and you have to be really careful. You know, this is not an easy job. Now before they would have just been doing one operation over and over again. Now this is a much more interesting role.
This is London's newest clothes repair workshop. Tailors, dry cleaners, dress agencies, they'll generally all do repairs, but it's the scale at which things are happening here that sets it apart. By 2025, more than 30,000 items of clothing will be repaired here and stopped from going to landfill.
At the moment, outdoor clothing brand Patagonia is making use of the repair centre.
We know that if we can get somebody to repair a product rather than buy new, not only does it stop it going to landfill, but it also reduces the footprint of that product just by about 30% extra.
The repair centre was originally founded in Amsterdam, where it's already handling 30,000 repairs a year from brands like Decathlon and Lululemon.
The industry is thirsty for a solution like a repair model. We see that the responsibility the brands have to change, to be more sustainable, to create engagement with the end consumers with something positive is really, really necessary.
We use 5 times more clothes than we did 2 decades ago, and clothing companies are creating more than 1 million garments every single day. One repair centre isn't going to stem the tidal wave of dresses, t-shirts and socks, but the co-founders here are seeing it as the start of something much bigger.
We do believe that repair and reconditioning of clothing is at the core of the change of the fashion industry. So it is our ambition to really make the system change. And the centre here in the UK, we're starting small, but our ambitions are big. At some point, if we can help those big fast fashion brands to become more circular, that's the end goal, because then we are really changing the system.
Your grandma always said a stitch in time saves 9. This factory has taken it to heart. Mickey Carroll, Sky News.
Now, in recent months, the cross-party consensus on tackling climate change has broken down a bit, with the Prime Minister changing targets on the introduction of electric vehicles and electric heating, seeking to make difference with the opposition. So where does this leave the coverage of climate change? How do people looking at it maintain impartiality whilst staying true to the science? Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by my former boss, John Riley, who's just edited a book, Toxic News, covering climate change, all about this subject. Why the book? What are the problems?
So I thought it was important that we heard from a range of journalists about what is probably the most pressing issue of our times. And I was interested in what other journalists thought about the quality of reporting on climate change. It's a really, really significant issue. It poses an existential threat to the planet and the humans on it. And I wanted to know what other journalists thought about the quality of the reporting.
And you published this at a time when the consensus in Parliament here over the kind of need to act fairly urgently and broad consensus over the policies broke.
It did break, and that was actually quite advantageous for the publication of the book, and in a sense gave it a slightly harder edge. I mean, I happen to think that the reaction to the U-turn sort of signifies a bigger problem. Stephen Barclay was appointed the new Environment Secretary, there was very little coverage whatsoever on what difference that would make to Britain's attitudes to the environment and climate change. None at all I could see.
What about the broadcasters' role in this? Are they doing their job when it comes to holding the government and others to account on climate change?
They are up to a point. So there are shows like this, which is fantastic. Other organisations have climate coverage, but it's not front and centre of their agendas. News desks, in my experience, are rather reluctant to pursue climate change stories because they feel they know the answers, and they feel that the audiences know the answers.
So up to a point you agree with some of the protest groups who have a go at the BBC and Sky and others for not, in their say, telling the truth about climate change. You have a certain sympathy with it.
I do, because I think that the news desks are not taking seriously enough their responsibility to alert the public to what is happening.
Until recently, you were in charge of one of those news desks. Why didn't you do more then?
I did. I tried. I failed.
Really?
I think
Why?
I failed because I hope I ran things in a consensual way, and often the news desk was reluctant to pursue a story. Oh, we know that, John. We know the planet's heating up, and it was at times an uphill struggle, and arguably I failed.
But news, as you know, is partly about what's new, and the newest story at the moment is public anguish about some of the costs of reaching net zero hitting them.
Well, I dispute that a bit, Tom. News is also about what's relevant and significant, and news desks are very happy to report day after day what's going on in Ukraine, rightly, day after day what's going on in the Middle East, rightly, so they should cover the environment day after day, rightly.
Why does it matter if we don't get climate coverage right?
Wow. It matters because a huge number of people in the end will die.
It's really that simple for you?
Yeah, yes. Climate change poses an existential threat to the planet, and if we don't report it, people will be unaware of the dangers and will not then try and change their lives to try and slow it down.
Well, thanks, John, and nice to see you again. Well, that's it for this week. Remember, you can catch up on all your environment and climate news on the Sky News website and app, or by scanning the QR code that's on your screen right now. Next week, we'll be looking at whether we should be growing more food in cities.